So a little while back, I did a poll on who would win in a battle. The most dysfunctional duo of today, Captain Eustace Kid and the Surgeon of Death Trafalgar Law, post Wano versus the Foolish Lord of Wano, Kozuki Oden. And there were a lot of mixed opinions down in the comment section, and considering it's been 4 whole months since I did a One Piece versus battle, I am so sorry it has been that long. I figured why not tackle this matchup since I've already covered Kid and Law several times on the channel. If you're new here, welcome, and consider checking out the other videos I have on the channel and subscribe for more in the future. Right now, we are shooting for 10,000 subscribers on the channel, and with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down the battle. So when breaking down Oden's strength in the hierarchy of One Piece, you truly can't separate his scaling from Kaido. It's loud said that after Oden completed his voyage with Roger, he returned to Wano much stronger compared to when he left, and his biggest battle after returning was against Kaido. And there's been a lot of talk about whether or not in that battle, if Kaido was at his peak or if he grew in strength after the battle. Thankfully, we have an easy way to make that determination by going to chapter 1167, where it's stated by the narrator that the pirates who scattered to the winds after God's Valley would grow in power over the next decade or two until they reached their primes and became the faces of the new era. In my opinion, I think it makes sense to give Kaido the full 20 years from this moment, considering that he was the youngest of the main Rocks Pirates crew. So if we break down the timeline, the Oden flashback, specifically Roger versus Whitebeard, took place 12 years after God's Valley. Then Oden sailed for 1 year with Roger before returning to Wano. Then, due to the deal he made with Orochi to protect the citizens of Wano, Oden proceeded to dance like a fool for 5 years, and when he realized that he was being played for a fool, he marshaled his forces and went to war with Kaido, meaning that God's Valley all the way to Oden versus Kaido, which took place in chapter 970, was a span of 18 years. Which is pretty close to it, but not a full 2 decades. And because the statement was made by the narrator, it's pretty clear that Kaido had 2 more years after this battle with Oden to get stronger before reaching his prime. So saying Oden was equal to or stronger than prime Kaido is unlikely. 18 years may not be far from a full 2 decades, but in a story like One Piece, a lot of progress can be made very quickly. And when it comes to training for 2 full years, it can lead to a night or day difference. I mean, just look at the Straw Hats after they completed their training arcs once the time skip was over. There really isn't a clear way to measure how weak the Kaido that Oden fought was in comparison to his prime self, but there are things we can draw from that definitely point to Kaido being a better fighter later on compared to when he fought Oden. For example, in the manga, it's pretty much depicted that Kaido only used his dragon form against Oden and was still in his dragon form while stunned from Oden's attack, and only turned into his base form off screen when the old hag distracted Oden. In the anime, the events of the battle play out pretty much the same, with the key difference being that Kaido gets up after getting hit with Paradise Totsuka and was about to have a clash with him while in his base form, and then the old hag interferes. But essentially, there is never a moment when Kaido uses his hybrid form against Oden. You could argue that it may have happened off screen, since it's stated that the battle took a very long time, but it's not even out of character for Kaido to stay in one form for a majority of the battle, since he stayed in base against Big Mom, and Kaido literally says that he was going to try and kill her before they eventually stopped fighting and formed a partnership. In my opinion, from a storytelling perspective, this could definitely be just Oda not wanting to reveal Kaido's hybrid form on screen just yet and wanting to save it for the big fights that take place in Act 3 of Wano, but just the fact that we as the audience have never seen Kaido use his hybrid form in the battle against Oden, never use his advanced forms of Thunder Bagua against Oden, never use his drunk modes, which is literally stated by Luffy to boost Kaido's Haki, and never use his flaming drum dragon attack. So Kaido either had more in the tank to use against Oden, or he ended up developing these other modes and attacks and polishing his powers more with his remaining 2 years. And I know some people who highly rate Oden will bring up Kaido's top 5, but the reality is that this man is not on the same level as the others. We already know Shanks was able to drive back essentially the current Kaido back during Marineford, who is objectively stronger than the one Oden fought back in the past. Whether it was a clash or a full-on battle, we don't know. We have to wait and see if Oda will actually ever show us what went down, but this is Shanks and Kaido's only interaction in the entire story as far as we know. So Shanks must have left a huge impression on the King of Beasts during this encounter. And there is no statement saying that Oden is on the same level as Roger or Whitebeard. The fact that Oden was having a difficult time facing off against Kaido, who wasn't at his prime just yet, is proof of that enough, and I'd argue that Rocks, despite his death, is still stronger than that version of Kaido as well. Now that the Gods Valley flashback is over, Kaido's top 5 is clearly just strong pirates he's encountered on his journey that he has great respect for. Oden's inclusion does not put him over other characters who are not included. Take Garp for example. Do you think Oden being in Kaido's personal list gives him automatic status over the guy who canonically has been boxing against Roger for decades? Might be the hardest no in the history of no's for me personally. That pretty much lays out the groundwork for what we're expecting for Oden in this matchup. I personally think he is still a top tier, he's just on the lower end of the totem pole in my opinion. So now let's go ahead and start breaking down the battle. So for this particular matchup, I do find it kind of funny that a lot of people underrate and downplay Kid in Law, when in his journal, Oden literally hypes up the Supernova as powerful pirates that are going to take out Kaido if he ends up dying. So Oden himself doesn't even believe that these guys are weak. And for this battle, I do think that the Lord of Wano will be on the back foot against these two. Like I said earlier, I think he is a top tier, but just on the lower end of all the characters who actually fit that criteria. Because you see, Oden is kind of like a low budget Shanks or Roger. All of them are swordsmen and all of them primarily go into battle with just Haki augmenting their stats and fighting styles. But I argue that Oden just has a weaker level of Haki in comparison to these guys. He has Conqueror's Haki 100%, that is great, but we can all agree that it's not on the same level as the other swordsmen mentioned. You can't even argue that his Haki is on the same level as Prime Kaido, and the same thing can be applied to his armament Haki too. And Oden has never once displayed Future Sight, so he is running around with basic observation as far as we know. He has no special X factor outside of the fact that he is a swordsman that has access to advanced conquerors and armament Haki, making him fairly bland in comparison to the other side with their abilities. Because post Wano, Kid and Law might not be top tiers themselves, but they are indeed a powerful duo in my opinion. Like for starters, Kid and Law blatantly have feats of being able to react and damage a stronger variant of Dragon Kaido. Kaido himself literally states that the Supernova are capable of getting past his high defenses. Law specifically has feats of reacting to Hybrid Kaido and actually getting some damage on him, as well as getting slammed with Hybrid Kaido's Thunder Bagua, which again, I'd argue is stronger than what Oden was ever able to produce. Kid engaged Big Mom on his own when she returns to the castle and was fighting against her 2 chapters before Law even showed up to team up with him. Kid eats her full Goro attack, her Ikoku sovereignty, and even survives her Mama Raid strike directly while being nerfed by Hawkins. And most of us can agree that although Law isn't a top tier right now with his current stats, but when it comes to a team fight discussion, he is S tier support with being able to get his teammates out of danger and help them get in perfect positions to land their attacks on their targets. And of course, the two of them together pushed Big Mom to sacrificing a year of her own lifespan to try and defeat the two of them because she acknowledged how strong they were. A lot of people downplay Kid and Law due to the giant bomb explosion at the end of the battle, but flat out ignore and skip over everything else that happened leading up to that point, and even ignoring Soul-Focused Big Mom stating how tired she was from fighting the two of them together. When she finally falls, Kaido couldn't even imagine that happening, and Luffy thinks the two of them are amazing for pulling that off. Seriously, just stop downplaying these guys. Especially because we are talking about their post-Wano variations, because honestly, these two are not holding back. They canonically have no issue using their awakenings at the start of the fight if it means achieving victory. I think Oden in his signature 2-sword style definitely will dish out amazing damage against Kid and Law for any attack that lands on them, but I don't think the two of them are getting one shot just based on what punishment they have already had to endure in the story. But I think the same could be true for the inverse, since Law and Kid are both able to consistently damage Kaido and Big Mom, but I don't think any of their regular attacks would one-shot Oden. Yes, Oden did tank Divine Departure from Roger, but that was Roger just saying hi. We know just based on what happened moments later that he had way more firepower in the tank compared to what he hit Oden with, so I don't think it's fair to try and scale him to Roger's full power. Also, there is one glaring issue when it comes to this battle. It's that the Devil Fruit abilities of Law and Kid are disgustingly broken against a basic fighter like Oden. I know some people will say that Oden's Conqueror's Haki will protect him since he should be capable of negating Devil Fruit abilities. Although he has never shown the ability on screen, I don't mind assuming that he can. But the problem with that line of thinking is that Haki does not negate every single Devil Fruit ability. Based on what we know, at least currently, it seemingly just negates lower level abilities. Kaido and Big Mom together were able to resist Law using Shambles and Amputation against them, but that is it. He was was still capable of using many of his basic Devil Fruit abilities against the two of them several times, and could still use shambles on himself and on his teammates to assist his allies. The same thing could be said about Kid as well, so if Big Mom and Kaido together could not negate all the dysfunctional duo's Devil Fruit abilities, what makes you think that Oden by himself could actually negate everything thrown his way? That really makes no sense unless you think Oden has vastly stronger Haki than both Kaido and Big Mom together. And also, specifically with Kid, I'd argue that Kid is a much stronger user of the Magnet Fruit in comparison to Captain John, the previous user, who literally was about to steal the axes of Gabon during God's Valley. Gabon, who we know is a conqueror, and we know Gabon had Conqueror's Haki at this point in time because the Holy Knights were constantly trying to steal Shanks back from the Roger Pirates, and he would always beat them up by negating their regeneration when they tried. The only one who was able to completely ignore the effects was Roger, but for argument's sake, let's say that Oden can actually resist having his blades taken from him when Kid is using his basic magnetism. The second he uses his awakening, Oden is cooked because it's confirmed in chapter 1024 that Big Mom's Haki was actively knocking people out in the midst of her battle against Kid and Law. And in 1030, Kid is able to use a sign to magnetize Napoleon to Big Mom. She could not negate the effects of Kid's awakening. Oden is pretty much screwed against this ability. He wouldn't even need to magnetize Oden himself, although he does have the option to do so if he chooses to go that route. He can place his sign anywhere on the battlefield and have any metal go to accumulate away from Oden, and with that, the swordsman will be losing his blades by that point. And that's why I called Oden a basic fighter for the most part, because his two sword style is his bread and butter. When he loses access to his swords, his overall firepower gets greatly reduced, which isn't even inconsistent to One Piece. Any pure swordsman would suffer the same drawbacks if they were unable to fight using their preferred style. Both Zoro and Killer are prime examples of this. And if Kid uses a sign specifically against Oden, he is effectively immobilized unless he can do what Slowpoke's Big Mom did and lift up an entire building or whatever surface that they are attached to and use it as a shield somehow as a desperate defense. Oden being pinned down this way is really just free eats to both Kid and Law, because he would be in the perfect position for Law to use Shock Will on him, and I doubt Oden has the same endurance as Big Mom, nor do I think he has the same endurance as Blackbeard, who literally powers through twice the amount of pain anyone else would normally have to deal with due to the power of his Darkness Fruit. Regardless, Oden would be taking some heavy damage off that alone, especially because again, Law has no issue spamming his awakening multiple times in quick succession, seeing as he literally did that against Blackbeard, using his awakening 3 times fairly quickly in that battle. But then when you stack on Kid using Damn Punk, things get a lot more grim, considering that a heavily weakened and exhausted Kid was able to blast 2 of his railgun shots at Big Mom. Think about how horrible things get when a fresh Kid post Wano can shoot 9 Damn Punks in 10 seconds. An assault so devastating, Shanks was genuinely shook by the destruction that was going to obliterate his entire fleet and had to shut that shit down himself using Divine Departure. And just like when we're talking about Law, I don't think Oden has the endurance of Big Mom to survive 2 Damn Punks, let alone 9 rapid-fired shots. In order for Oden to win, you would essentially have to wank him to absurd levels, which as we already discussed is not the case since he is not on the same level as Prime Kaido, as well as the other members of Kaido's top 5, unless you want to say that Oden somehow hits harder than Hybrid Kaido Slender Bagua or the myriad of attacks from Slowpoke's Big Mom. He isn't going to be one-shotting either member of the duo. His Haki is not strong enough to resist the powerful abilities both of the other fighters possess, and the raw firepower that Law and Kid possess when they are going all out frankly just outshines anything Oden has ever displayed. So for this match, I have Kid and Law walking away the winners of this round. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and big thanks like always to my goat Tiberius for his amazing work on the thumbnail. Link to all of his socials in the description. Check out the other videos I have on the channel, and I appreciate a subscription on my way to 10,000. Hope you have a great day, and please stay safe. Peace.